Good afternoon, happy Thursday, and welcome to Blackbullion South Africa's second webinar. Shout out to you for joining us. Our aim is to build a community of young people who want to become financially savvy. So drop me a message in the chat box at the bottom and let me know where you're currently watching from. Where are you located? So I'm all the way in Joburg. Where are you? Let me know. My name is Tsepo Kapane and I'm part of the Black Bullion South Africa team. I'm very passionate about financial education and I will be your host. Now, today's webinar, we got something tasty. Today's webinar is to help you to move from hustle to flow. What does that mean, right? So we'll be helping you to unlock your side hustle's potential with a very special guest. So if you want to start a side hustle, but you've been having a couple of challenges, or perhaps you have an existing side hustle and you want to take it to the next level, this webinar is for you. So a couple of house rules and notes. Please use the chat box to ask questions, to interact with me and other members of the Black Bullion South Africa team, Ronell, Scott, and Duncan, and of course, other attendees. We'll also have a number of polls and interesting hustle questions during this session. The webinar is being recorded. And of course, just like the last webinar we had, there are some goodies. I love to give away some beautiful things. So there are some goodies that we will be giving away. And we'll be giving away 3 Mr. D vouchers, right? Each to the value of $100. So you'll have lunch on Black Bullion SA. That's for 3 people, right? So we'll give away 1 voucher for a person who interacts the most in the chat box. So I want that person that's here, interacting, talking to us. We'll give 1 to somebody that's following us on social media. I'll share some of our handles. And then I'll give a 3rd voucher to the person that asks the best question or gives us the best comment. Pretty easy, right? So in terms of social media, we're on Twitter at Black Bullion SA. We're on Instagram with the same handle, Black Bullion SA. We've also got a Facebook page, Black Bullion South Africa, and you can now find us on YouTube, of course. Reading a couple of your comments, I see people are in Joburg, people are in Cape Town. Buka says, I'm in Joburg. Akona says, I'm also in Joburg. Very, very nice. I see Max says, I'm out in Durban. So we've got people from all over the world joining us today. Absolutely love that. So in terms of the goodies, you know exactly what you've got to do in terms of winning. Let's take a quick look at today's agenda and our menu, right? So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking a bit about side hustles. What is a side hustle, right? We're going to try and give you guys a definition. We'll talk about how do you make a side hustle work for you, right? And then we'll get you guys started in terms of how do you move from the hustle to the flow. So you've got the idea, but you don't know how you're going to actually execute it. Then we'll talk a bit about the benefits of actually starting a side hustle. So now you're like, cool, I want to start it. What are the actual benefits? And then last but not least, questions that you should ask yourself before you actually start with the hustle. What should you be asking yourself? So that's what's on our menu in terms of today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. Wherever you are, we appreciate you. So I've got to introduce our very, very special guest. Her name is Anke Houtzamer. If I said it wrong, I know she's going to correct me, right? So she's the owner of the Avenue House Photography Studio, and she was able to take an idea, right? Create a side hustle, then move that side hustle to a profitable business, right? So she's absolutely amazing. Anke, welcome to the Hustle and Flow webinar. I'm so keen to hear about your story. And there she is on the screen. Anke, how are you doing?
Hi, everyone. Hi.
Lovely. Anke, I want you to give me a high five, show me a little bit of some energy. So I'm going to give us a bit of a countdown, and then I want you to give me a high five. Everybody else, we might not see you, but give us a high five as well. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yes, fire! Okay, it's absolutely amazing to have you in terms of our webinar, talking everything side hustle. So before we get into your side hustle story, I've got a random question for our audience. And remember, I did say that, if you interact with us, smart comments, smart questions, you might just win yourself that voucher. So I've got a random question for some of our audience, right? If you were given 10K, 10,000 Rand, what kind of side hustle would you start? If I gave you 10K, what kind of side hustle would you start? Anke, I'm actually going to start with you. I know your business it's in the space of photography, but outside
Hmm.
of photography, if I gave you 10K, what would you use it on?
I don't want to say what I'd use 10K on because I'd probably spend it on clothing. Um, but I don't know. I think I'd probably like go into using it towards like starting like a proper thrifting business because I'm really into thrifting. I love thrifting. So I'd probably use it within that clothing sphere.
Within the clothing sphere. Okay, cool.
Mm,
So I like cooking and baking. I mean, you can see my size. I'm
okay.
a big guy, right? So I'd have a side hustle around cooking. Cooking what? I'm not sure, but it'll definitely be around
Mm.
cooking. Let me see some of the comments. Munera says a makeup business, so selling some makeup.
Mm,
That's a big one. Anka, you and the rest of the ladies want to look good. There's even some guys that also, want to look good in terms of their makeup.
exactly.
So makeup definitely makes sense. Keep sending us those comments. If I gave you 10K to start a business, what type of side hustle would you start? Max says, I'd use the 10K as a deposit on a studio. I've been eyeing one for a while. What type of studio is this,
That's
Max? Is
pretty
this
cool.
a photography studio? Is it a studio to record music? What would you sort of start? I'm very keen to hear in terms of that. And Anka, thank you as well for sharing. I think, Anka, a great place to start is how on earth would you define an actual side hustle?
Okay, so a side hustle for me, it's like it's very literal. It's something that you're doing on the side. So maybe you have a main focus, which is you studying, or you have a 9 to 5 job, or there's something that you're doing like in normal business hours. And then the side hustle is a business venture that you basically grow from a hobby that takes up some of your time after business hours. It brings in some extra cash. It's just something that you're growing from a hobby, basically.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And you touched on quite a lot of important things. I mean, I
Mm,
think the way that people define a side hustle, it tends to differ. But I think the most important thing is that it's some type of self-employment, right? Some sort of
yeah,
hustle. It's outside of your regular job or schedule. So if you're a student, it's not when you're supposed to be in a lecture. So it's any time outside of that, not when you're supposed to be in a tutorial, right? It's about monetizing a skill that you have to add it to your current income stream. And of course, it's about turning a skill, a product, a service into money. And it's about solving problems that are right in front of you. Right. So a lot of what you said definitely resonates with me. I think the other important thing is that, a side hustle doesn't have to be complicated, right? There's this assumption that it needs to be complicated, it needs to be fancy. So these are just a couple of examples of other young people that have found a problem, an issue in their space, or they've saw some sort of an opportunity, and they've just decided to start a side hustle with what they have. So as you can see, there's a young lady there selling some coffee, selling some muffins, and it looks like it's somewhere close to like a pavement or some houses. So maybe there's some traffic, there's people moving up and down, they're thirsty, they're hungry, and she's doing that. There's a gent there selling some of his oranges. There's another lady also making sales. So a side hustle doesn't necessarily have to be complicated and crazy and sophisticated. The important thing is that it's profitable. That's the most
yeah.
important thing. Anka, I'd love for you to tell us a bit about your business, right? The Avenue House Photography Studio. Just tell us a bit about it.
Okay, so the Avenue House is a photography and videography business. It's owned by myself and my partner Jay. I do all the photography, he does all the videography, and we're based in Cape Town. So the basis of our business is that we do weddings and events. That's our main income. But then within our business, we actually have a side hustle as well. So within the business, we are also doing our conceptual art shoots. So just we touch on with our conceptual art shoots, it's basically our passion projects that we do. So when we have some free time, we throw ourselves fully into our artwork and we create art pieces. So that kind of is something that we do apart from the main cash flow within our business. And that's basically what the Avenue House is.
Yeah, and it's been a very successful business. And who says you can't take your creativity and actually create a business? Anka, I'm keen to know, right? Your business obviously started as a side hustle initially, right?
Yeah.
Where did you get the idea to start it within the photography space? So, sort of just the beginning of that story.
Okay, so my partner was actually studying art and design, and he was doing some photography, like random shoots that he would get. And I was studying towards my LLB degree, which is like the complete opposite. And I always found myself in front of the camera. So I would just be like posing, like every time there was a shoot that he wanted to do, I'd be in front of the camera. And then I'd also like accompany him to photo shoots every now and then. And eventually, like I saw myself directing all the shoots that we were doing. So I was there, I was just taking control. And sometimes I'd even like pick up the camera and be like, I see the shot, I want to do it. So I'd do that. And eventually I realized that there's a love for photography. There's actually something there. So it became a hobby of mine. I took pictures every now and then. And because I was a student, I then realized I can actually make some cash off this hobby because I didn't really have a job when I was studying. I was fully focused on my studies, and this was quite a lucrative idea. So that was where the idea actually came from to start the side hustle. And this was about 6 years ago.
Yeah, there's something so interesting that you said, right? It naturally came to you. A lot of people that I know that have side hustles always say it naturally came to me. It was a passion, it was a skill, it was something that just vibed with me well. And it's something we're going to touch on a little bit later and dig a little bit deeper into that, right? So, to our audience who are all over the country, right? I've got a poll for you guys, right? I want you guys to spill the tea. I want to know, do you currently have a side hustle, right? A, yes, you have a side hustle. B, no, you don't have a side hustle. And C, you're sort of starting to think about one. And maybe this webinar is a chance for you to be like, I've always had this idea. Maybe if I'm in a space with some like minded people, I might just actually start it off. So, do you currently have a side hustle? A, yes. B, no. C, I'm thinking about starting one. Let us know what your thoughts are in terms of that poll. So, of course, Anka has a side hustle, moved it towards a business. I've got my own little side hustle as well. I'm into podcasting, right? My mom even has one as well. She sells these coats. So I'm surrounded by people who tend to be in that space in terms of side hustle. So I'm keen to know from you guys. Get back onto the poll. Do you currently have a side hustle? A, yes. B, no. C, I'm thinking about starting one. So I want to see some of the poll results. I've got a sense that it might be 50-50. I think starting a side hustle can be a little bit nerve wracking. So I'm going to go back to those poll results and I'm going to be keen to see whether people have one or not. So, as I mentioned, I'm in podcasting, know a couple of other people in different types of spaces, and we'll go back to those polls and actually see what is on them in terms of who has a side hustle and who doesn't have a side hustle. Anka, in the meantime, there's something that I'm very curious to know about, right? So, you've
Sure.
moved from having a side hustle, right, to running a full time business. What's the
Yeah.
difference between the two? The difference between I have a side hustle and the difference between I now have an actual business.
Mm. I think I think the main difference for me personally is the amount of time that I could give my side hustle and then the amount of time I have to actually give my business. So when I say time, for my side hustle, I was doing it when I could. So when I didn't have classes or there was like a semester break or anything like that on the weekends, I would spend my time working on the side hustle. But it wasn't a main focus for me. I don't want to say I didn't care too much about it. I obviously cared about it, but I gave it energy when I felt I could give it energy. And then with the business, it's a complete 360 because I'm investing all my time into my business. So there's a mental shift because now you realize that this has to be a 24/7 thing. There's no such thing as a 9 to 5 anymore. You have to wake up in the middle of the night and do what you need to do because this secures your paycheck, this secures everything for you. So it's a real mental shift between what the side hustle is and then what your main source of income then is. Also, I'd say I I became more focused on my quality of my product. So when it was a side hustle, it was just a hobby. It was like it was nice pictures, but when it became my full-time business, my focus had to shift completely and I had to then start thinking a bit more about my quality and how much more was going to go into my product. And then also just the financial aspect. It was a huge shift because obviously with a side hustle, it's like you have people just paying into your personal bank account. It's not a big thing. They'll pay you into your personal bank account, you'll use the cash, it's whatever, it's extra cash. And then with a full-time business, you obviously have to have checks and balances. You have to make sure that things are working correctly. You have to have a proper business banking account. You're going to start paying yourself a paycheck. And that's a major shift. So I think those are the key differences that I've noticed between having a side hustle and then having a full time business.
Yeah, you've touched on such important things. I think, you've spoken about the amount of time you're spending now. You're spending more and more time. You're focusing on the quality, and the seriousness of it now. There's also structure. So now there's checks and balances. Now people are not just e-walleting you money. Now there's a business bank account. There's some seriousness to it. So it's about the structure. And what's very interesting, looking at the poll results, right? I did ask, how many people have a side hustle. Those that said yes, those that said no, those that said are thinking about it. So 37% of attendees said, I'm thinking about starting one, right? So it's the majority of people are thinking of starting one. 33% of them have a side hustle, which is a big number. And then 29% say, no, I don't have a side hustle. So we've got a big group of people that are considering actually having one, which I think is interesting. But I think in terms of side hustles, what's important is that, because I saw a question now, somebody saying, can you balance it between your studies and your side hustles? I think a side hustle needs you to be flexible, right? So it needs to be flexible. It needs to fit into your existing schedule. So whether it's something you do before you go to classes, something you do in the break, something you do after classes, or you do on the weekend, your side hustle does not have to be complicated and innovative. It just needs to be profitable. It needs to make this. This is what it's about, right? And you may need to do a little bit of some research and learn and read. Because when you're starting something, you don't know everything. So you've almost got to have an open spirit that is willing to learn, right? So that's the difference, I think, as well, is that you also need now start to change your psyche, which is something that Anke has mentioned as well. Anke, when thinking about starting your side hustle, what were some of the barriers that you faced, right? Because now you've got this idea, you want to get into the photography space with your partner. What are some of the barriers, some of the challenges, the things that were sort of stopping you guys from taking that first initial step?
Okay, so I know you touched on the psyche, so I actually want to talk about that. For me, it was 100% a mental barrier. So, yes, there's the obvious things that will come up that would be barriers, but 100% it was a mental barrier because I was stuck between I'm studying towards my LLB degree, and people in that sphere don't see me as a creative. So, yes, I might look creative and I might love artistic things, but I'm studying towards something very serious. If you want to be an attorney, what are you doing taking pictures? So that was like, it was a big thing for me because I had to navigate this complicated question. And everybody asked me that question like, are you serious about this? What does this even mean? Why would you want to do this? And I didn't know how to answer that question because it was as simple as this is my hobby and I can make money from it. So what's stopping me? And I think once I got past that mental barrier and just thinking about what other people are going to think, I was actually able to step into it fully and just commit. I just had to get past what I thought other people were thinking of me. And then I think another main barrier for me was that maybe this is going a bit too far, but like once I stepped into actually doing the side hustle, a lot of people, something that I noticed, a lot of people were thinking of my partner as being the owner of the side hustle because he's a guy and he maybe studied within this field and I didn't study within the field. So I saw it as, I'm a young woman of color and I'm stepping into a field with a partner who's a man and he's getting all the attention from the business. And that was like a barrier for me because I had to understand where this was coming from and also push past it and change the narrative um, for women coming into a field and being partnered with a guy and what that actually meant.
Yeah, I mean that's so interesting, the stuff that you mentioned, particularly the last thing, being a woman of color and some of the barriers that comes with, which I'm so glad you were able to overcome, because now you have this business that is so successful. And it's interesting, Anka, as you're speaking, so many people are already touching on some of the barriers that they're facing. So I think we'll get into an actual poll once again for our audience. I'm keen to know, what has stopped you from starting a side hustle, right? So we had this 39% that said, I'm thinking about it, right? I'm considering it. What's stopping you from making that next step? Right. So I see Sava said funding is one of them. But in terms of the poll itself, I'm curious to know from you guys, right? So what has stopped you from starting a side hustle? A, lack of money and resources. So that's something that Savas has touched on. Lack of money, right? Could it be B, lack of business experience? So in your mind, you're like, I actually don't know anything about business or budgeting or anything like that. I'm not ready to start one. Or C, just the fear of the unknown, right? You're too much in your head. You're wondering, are people going to support you? Are they not going to support you? If you're selling something, are people going to make jokes? Like, you just start to overthink the entire idea. So get onto the poll. Keen to know what has stopped you from starting a side hustle. A lack of money and resources. B, a lack of business experience. Or C, a fear of the unknown. And of course, lots and lots of comments. As I did say, there are those 3 vouchers up for grabs. Have to follow us on social media. I did mention all our platforms. Comment. So the person that says quite a lot, and of course, those really, really brilliant questions and comments is what we're looking for. So in terms of the poll, I'm very curious to know from you guys. I think from my side, Anka, it's a little bit similar to you. I was too much in my head. I was thinking
Mm.
too much. I was worrying too much. What are people going to say? Are people going to laugh? Are people going to listen to my podcast? Are people going to think it's nonsense? Because I think the moment people start doing things on social media, your confidence takes a bit of a beating. So I was worried about that. But in terms of the poll results, right? So this is what some of our attendees are saying, right? So what has stopped you from starting a side hustle? 50% have said a lack of money and resources. That's a big number, and we'll touch on that with Anka, right? Uh, 25% say a lack of business experience, right? And then the other 25% says a fear of the unknown. But it's that 50% around resources that has me a little bit worried, right? And I'm hoping that we'll get into it with Anka, and we'll talk about what could we do in terms of that. Anka, keen to know from you, what would you say are the benefits of starting a side hustle? I want us to get into the positivity of it, right? So we'll get
Mm.
into the funding and the lack of that, but let's get into the positivity. What are the benefits of actually just starting your side hustle?
Mm. Um, a benefit for me was that I actually gained business experience. So I had no business experience coming into my side hustle. I was a science kid at school. I didn't do any business subjects. My LLB like eventually touched on like business aspects, but before that, I had no business experience whatsoever. So I was just learning as I was going, and my business is it taught me life basically. I don't want to put it too broadly, but it taught me a lot. It taught me how to be an adult. It taught me how to manage finances a bit better. And I know that's probably an odd concept that your business would teach you how to manage money, because you think you'd start off knowing how to manage money and then bring that into the business. But for me, it was the complete opposite. So benefits for me was definitely I gained business experience. I learned how to deal with clients and working with other people because I didn't have this coming into the business. And obviously, a main benefit is it's extra cash. So we can't overlook the extra cash because that's the main benefit and that's the goal.
Yeah, I think you've touched on a lot of important things. I think it's an opportunity for you to further something that you're interested in, a passion. I mean, you were interested in photography, definitely the additional income. I think essentially that's what we need because then it gives you an opportunity to pay off some of your student debt, to build an
Exactly.
emergency fund, to save, to invest. Perhaps you might even just want to create a fun fund, right? So you can buy some of the things that you enjoy because your stipend or your allowance is not enough, but you still want to live and enjoy a little bit of life. And so, you might want to use it for some fun stuff. And then I think the really important one is that you learn essential business skills. And I think you also start to understand people a little bit better because I'm sure even in your business, Anka, you're dealing with different people all the time, but you're now
All the
starting to better understand like the
time.
psyche of people, like why do people do or say certain things, which I think is also a really, really a big one as well in terms of that. Would you agree that you also start to better understand how people function?
100%. You know, you have to take on so many personalities that you also just have to, like, once you deal with this client and then you deal with the next client, you have to like mentally just shift so that you can understand all these different people. And at the end of the day, you're taking on so many different roles because you have to relate to so many different people. So 100% it helps you to relate more to people and to understand people a bit better.
Yeah, 100%. And of course, remember that Anka will be answering all your direct questions later on. So get onto the chat box. If you've got a specific question around side hustles, post it up. As I said, you might just win yourself that voucher. And of course, we do want to assist and let Anka share her story. And hopefully, that also, put a little bit of some fire in your belly so that you could start out with your side hustle. So, Anka, I want us to move from hustle to flow, right? So, I want us to talk about getting into your side hustle, and we'll talk about finances and all of those things. And I think a great place to start, Anka, is maybe we need to debunk a few misconceptions around side hustles. There's about four of them that I could identify. I'll tell you what it is, and then we can sort of discuss it a little bit, right? So the first misconception that I'd like for us to debunk, maybe it's true, maybe it isn't, I don't know, is that you need a lot of money and complicated equipment to get started.
Okay, so I can speak from my perspective. When I was starting out, I had a very basic camera. So it was like the most basic camera, and that's what I was using to just shoot any shoot that I was getting. That's what I was using, and I quickly realized that it's important for me to learn the basic camera and to understand everything that comes with that basic camera and all the limitations that it has before I can actually move on to a more complicated piece of equipment. So eventually, when I was able to invest in a more expensive camera, a more complicated camera, I fully understood my initial equipment that I started with, and it was easier for me to switch. And that's been happening for me. And that's why I'm saying it's so important to actually just start with the basics. Start at step one. You don't have to have the most complicated equipment. You're not going to go buy the most expensive oven just to start off. Like if you're baking, you're not going to start there. Start off with something small, and then with the little money that you do get in, you can use it to invest in your business. So all the money that you get, you don't have to take all that money and just go spend it and just go party and have the best time. You can take off that money and put it towards your next piece of equipment, your next step within your business. So you have to keep investing in yourself. So it's not necessary to start with a lot, because
Okay.
I started with nothing basically, and I built it from the ground up. And that's why I'm saying it really is possible. You don't need the best equipment and complicated equipment to start off.
No, completely agree. I think when you're starting off, you almost need to use whatever it is that you have. So I know when I started in the podcasting space, I didn't have a studio. I didn't even have a mic. I used my phone. So it didn't sound great, but it was a start. So sometimes as a young person, you need to be a little bit creative of what could I use that I have. So that you take that pressure off in terms of I need to
Mm.
have a lot of funding. I need to have equipment. So sort of start with what you have. So that's the first one. The second one that I'd like for us to either debunk or confirm in terms of misconceptions is that starting a side hustle requires a lot of your time.
Mm. So, like I said in the beginning, a side hustle is literally something that you do when you have time. It's not your main 9 to 5. It's not your main focus. So for me, with my side hustle, I was doing it on the weekends, and that's weekends when I was not studying. So I was doing it on my weekends. I was doing it in the evenings or before classes, whenever I had a moment. And I also eventually realized, like, once I started working, I obviously didn't have enough time to focus on the side hustle all the time. So I would maybe make 30 minutes a day to work on it. 30 minutes just to reply to a couple of messages, or an hour. So I started off with 30 minutes, and then eventually I pushed it to an hour. And that's all I gave my side hustle until eventually I could give it a lot more. But I found that the little time that I did give it was important. And you can start from there. You can start from what you are able to give until you are able to give more.
Yeah, so it's about almost like scheduling when exactly do I have time to do it. So if I'm a
Exactly.
student, I start lectures at this time, they end at this time. I have to work around that schedule. So definitely, it does not take a lot of time. So in terms of our third misconception, you can't start a side hustle without having business skills. So you need to have business skills in order to start a side hustle.
Okay, I think I touched on this earlier on when I said I had no business skills coming in. So I'd say 100% it's not true. You don't need business skills immediately when you start. I think you can take your hustle and allow your hustle to actually teach you business skills. And there's so much resources. You can go on YouTube if there's something that you need to know and you just can't figure it out. Go on YouTube, you'll find someone talking about it. Google it, you'll find an answer. It might not be the best answer, but you can build on that, and you can ask people around you. So networking is key. I think someone said it in the comments. Like, networking is key. You just need to ask people, ask a family member, someone somewhere has done it, and you can learn from that. So really, if you think business skills is like one of the barriers that's stopping you, it's not. It shouldn't be. You can learn.
Yeah, and I think there's so many resources that are available. I mean, it's webinars like this and the spaces that we create. There's
Mm,
books. There's other people that have side hustles that you can engage as well. There's YouTube and all of that. So I think it definitely makes sense that just get started and then you learn certain things as it starts to move along. So the
yeah.
last one is a side hustle has to be based on an innovative and groundbreaking idea. So it can't be something that somebody else has started. It has to be innovative. It has to be groundbreaking. And it's interesting, Anka, because even when you're watching like TV series or movies, it's always like this geek that's like developed this crazy type of tech, and then that's where the side hustle starts. Is that the case? Must it always be like that?
No, definitely not. I mean, if everybody goes to their computers now and they type in Cape Town photographer, they're gonna find thousands of people. So, I mean, my idea is not groundbreaking. Where I started is not groundbreaking. It's not innovative. Really, my partner and I were actually discussing this, and if I'm going to explain it, he's going to say I'm explaining it wrong, but I'll try. So he had this way of saying it. You see, there's so many different bread brands, right? And you get your Sasco, you get your Future Life bread. There's all these different bread brands, but somehow they all sell out every day. And the main difference is that all of them are targeted at a different group of people. The target market is different, so they all sell out every day. And the point is that it comes down to the packaging. What is this bread offer that this one doesn't? What's the difference between it? And that's why I just want to bring it back to the photography sphere. For me, it's like within our business, we are a package. So yes, you get your photography, you get your videography, and it's a duo. There's a lot of other duos in Cape Town that can do the same thing. However, when you're booking with us, we tell a story, we tell an artistic story. I try to create an art piece out of your wedding or out of your event. It's not just pretty pictures. And it's the same with my partner with his films that he creates. It's very artistic. He takes a lot of time to pay attention to the type of music that he wants to use for that event or for that wedding. And that's our package, and it's the way that we reply to our people. We take pride in doing our admin and actually replying to our clients, whereas maybe with another duo, their package is that they are selling love, and they're selling that they are a married couple and they love and they're going to cry at your wedding and it's going to be a whole emotional experience. That's their package that they're selling. So the way they market it would be to that particular group of people that are looking for that kind of duo. And the way we market ours is that we are selling art, and we will then appeal to a different group of people. So it's really about the full package as your business and your product and how you appeal to your different target markets. It's not about being an innovative or groundbreaking idea that you need. It's just about how are you going to create profit out of what you are selling.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is so important. Your side hustle does not have to be complicated. It does not
Mm,
require you to be Einstein. It needs to be simple. It needs for you to use whatever resources you have, because essentially it's about profit, right? And
yeah.
once you're making profit, then you can start to think about how do I move this baby into an actual business. But now it's the basics, right? So customer service is going to be important. It's doing all the small little things, no complication. If I'm selling you muffins, I'm going to sell you muffins with love. Right? I want it to be convenient. I'll come to the offices wherever you are. So that's what it's about when you start. So I think what you're saying, Anka, is so important. And I want us to touch again on skills and qualities, right? What would you
Mm.
say are some of the key skills or maybe even the qualities that a person needs to have in order to start a side hustle? Because I think there's certain qualities that you need to have in order to succeed in it.
Mm. I think number one is patience. So, like I said, giving that 30 minutes a day, 30 minutes to an hour, or when you have a chance, just giving time to your business and knowing that it's not going to take off immediately. I mean, it might, that would be great. But that's not how things work. It will take time. So, you just have to be patient and actually just work at it. So you have to be hardworking and you need to have patience. And then you also need to have a what next attitude. So, okay, I've reached this point. Now, what's next for me? Or this side hustle didn't work. What is next? You don't have to give up on yourself. And you also need to see that failure is it's just a word. It's not a real thing because failure is just it means it's a learning curve. You can learn from the mistake that you made. It doesn't mean that it's the end of the road. And with that, you just have to be a positive thinker. So always thinking positively, not just giving up, thinking, what if I actually succeed? Not what if this thing fails? What if people laugh at me? Look, what if I succeed? And I think that's the main point, qualities that you need.
I absolutely love that. And I see Karabo's agreeing a lot with you, saying, my number one would be passion, right? You have
Mm,
to have passion. That's what will help you to wake up, to see gaps, to serve people, to be willing to put energy into building this thing. So definitely agreeing with, some of those qualities that you need to have,
yeah.
including the stuff that you've mentioned, such as passion, which I think is important. So, apart from the skills or, the qualities that you need to possess, I think there's a number of questions that you need to ask yourself if you're looking to start a side hustle, right? One of the
Mm,
questions you need to ask yourself is, what am I passionate about? What am I interested in, right? What comes naturally to me, right? Anka mentioned something very interesting, and I'll go back to it. Being in front or behind the camera, it was a natural thing, right? So, what comes naturally to you? What problems are you trying to solve, right? When you look at your immediate space, what problem are you trying to solve? Perhaps you're in res, and people want to plait their hair. They need to travel X amount of kilometers. Could you plait their hair there in res, right? You need to cut people's hair. Could you cut their hair in res? So what problems can you solve around you? Don't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be massive, right? How can you monetize an existing skill? So you skilled at something. How do you monetize it, right? Who will pay for your service or product? Another question that you need to think about. What do my friends or family often ask my advice or opinion on? Right? Something else to guide you. Then one of them is, what resources do I currently have at my disposal right now? What do you have right now that you can use? Don't worry, stress about what do you have now that you could use. And then lastly is, how much money do I need to start? So do a little bit of research, be realistic, look at your budget, look at what you have. I think these are some of the key questions that you need to ask yourself before you then decide to go on this journey. Anka, you spoke a couple of times about your partner, and it's something that I'm really interested in. Right, there might be somebody now who's listening to who's part of the webinar. They're enjoying it. They are now motivated to start their webinar, and a question comes up: should I start it with a friend, with a family member, with somebody that I'm dating? So, what are some of the benefits and I guess the drawbacks of starting a side hustle with somebody else?
Okay, so I think I'll start with the benefits. For me, it's that there's someone that I could always bounce my ideas off. I didn't feel like I was intruding on their time or their space because, we were both aiming for the growth of the business and the growth of the side hustle. So it was great to have someone that I could bounce ideas off, someone that I could talk to about the side hustle and be 100% that was 100% with me in it. I don't know if that makes sense. Um, and then another benefit is so I have a very straight up approach when it comes to conflict. So when there's a situation within the business or um, with a client, something that we need to solve, like a problem solving thing, I'm very I want to jump in and solve the thing immediately. I want the problem gone. Whereas my partner is more like calm, collected. He's like, let's take some time, think about it, and we'll move from there. And sometimes it's the opposite, where I'm the calm and collected one. That's very rare, but it happens. So it's nice to have that, that different personalities that can sort of balance each other out. So I think if you're wanting to start a side hustle with someone else, you have to look for someone that you can work well together. It's not just, oh, we great friends, but we don't know if we're actually gonna like vibe on that level. You need to know that you can actually work with that person. Um, and with the personality thing, I think maybe that's also a drawback, because if you have clashing personalities, it's going to be a problem. If you both headstrong people, it's going to go nowhere. You're going to sit with the problem forever. You'll never like solve the problem properly. And I think that would be the main drawback for me. And then also, you need to also consider the amount of time that you can give your side hustle, like you and your partner. Because for me, something that I noticed is, like, initially I was willing to work on the side hustle like 2 o'clock in the morning. If I want to discuss this thing, I want to discuss it. But then you also need to understand, for your partner, maybe it's not the right time for them. They need some time. There's certain hours within which you can discuss these things. So you just need to have an understanding of how you want to work with people and understand everyone's time. So if it's a group of people starting with 2 people or it's a family member, just have respect for their time.
Such an interesting one, because I think sometimes you're very quick to say, "Hey, me and you should just start something," but you don't think about all these, the positives and
Mm.
the negatives of it. So it's such an interesting one. And just a reminder that we are giving away those goodies in terms of the Mr. D vouchers valid at $100. I want you to enjoy lunch after this, right? And for one of those people, you need to follow us on social media. So on Twitter, it's at Blackbullion SA. Same handle on Instagram, Blackbullion SA. Then of course we do have our Facebook page, which is Blackbullion South Africa. So go and follow us, like us, stalk us. We'll follow you back, and you might just win yourself that voucher. But yeah, Anka, super interesting in terms of whether you should do it with a partner or not, which I think is quite interesting. Another question that I've also been thinking about, Anka, is once the side hustle was up and running, how did you keep track of the finances, right? How did that play out?
Okay. So, like I said in the beginning, it was just like people paying into either my bank account or my partner's bank account. And that was that. That's how we keep track of it. So, money comes in, money goes out. It's whatever. It was just some extra cash. But eventually, we became a bit more serious about it. So, we had an Excel sheet and we noted everything on the Excel sheet. I think I also used like a normal Word document to just keep track of like clients and who was still supposed to pay. It wasn't like groundbreaking financial management. Um, and then like also just keeping slips, so keeping track of like slips. And then eventually I started being a bit more serious about it. We opened a business banking account, and then still it was just the Excel sheet. So at the side hustle phase, it was just about keeping a good Excel sheet and keep taking note of how, like, the invoices and all of that, just taking note of all of it. But I think once we moved into the business sphere, it was more taking a step towards getting a, what's it called, an accountant. Sorry, I lost my
A
train of thought.
professional into it, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, eventually we went the professional route, but when it was just at the side hustle phase, we kept it very simple, just keeping track of the Excel sheet, updating it at the end of every week, and not every single day, just at the end of the week, knowing what we spent, what money came in. It was very simple.
Yeah, and I think that's essentially how much money am I spending on materials or whatever it is, how much money am I
Mm.
making, and then tracking it and balancing it out. So it's very much
Yeah.
like having your own budget, right? You know how much
Yeah.
money is coming in, how much money is going out. You have to pay this, you have to buy that. So it's just about balancing it at the beginning bits, which I think makes quite a lot of sense. So another question for our audience who have been absolutely amazing in terms of that chat box. I'm keen to know, who are some of your favorite local entrepreneurs and brands, right? We've got a lot of talented South Africans in our country. Who are some of your favorite local entrepreneurs and brands? There's a whole lot out there. Anka, do you want to quickly share who's your favorite entrepreneur brand, particularly local? I want us to inspire everybody else so that they know that it's very much possible.
Okay, so like I said, I'm 100% into my thrifting. So, one of my favorite local brands, they're actually Joburg based. They are called Vintage Thrift Hub. So, they have an Instagram page and they have like over 20,000 followers just of thrifting. And it's women owned, it's black owned, so I love it. One of my favorites. And then also, there's someone that I really admire. Her name is Chelsea. She owns a business called Colexi, also one of my favorites. And then there's also a jewelry store that I really like, local. It's called Luna and Lucy.
Ooh, interesting, interesting. So, looking at some of the comments, Karabo says Lebu Gunguluza is one. Sava says Vusi Tembegwayo is one of my favorite. Nkateko says Raymond Ackerman is at the top of his list. So, quite an interesting mix of them. Nacho says Vintage Thrift Hub, Luna and Lucy, Kolexi as well. Cherie says Coco Collective. Also a new Cape Town based online thrift store. So quite a lot of interesting, diverse type of businesses, which is really, really interesting. And of course, keep commenting, keep letting us know what your thoughts are. Anka, I want to move in terms of keeping the hustle on the go, right? So getting lessons from the hustle. When did you know that it was the right time to make the jump from side hustle to full-time business owner? I know you mentioned time was one of the things, but I'm curious to know what else led you to believe that this is the right time to take my side hustle and now actually move it into an actual business.
Mm. So for my partner and I, like I said, at some point we were both working full time, and this was our side hustle. Um, COVID actually hit, so we registered the business in 2019, and then it was still a side hustle, even though we registered the business and had the business banking account and all of that. By 2020, COVID hit, and we were home for like I think 2 months, like the heavy lockdown. I can't remember how long it actually was. But within that time, we were just sitting and discussing our business a lot because we had a lot of time to talk. So we put a lot of planning into the business and where we wanted to be with the business. And we started just recording like random discussions for our Instagram page. So we discuss where we are at with our business, what our plans are. We did all of that within that time. And once we returned to work, I think photography and videography was really taking off within our business, even though it was like heavy lockdown and people couldn't really get married. I think people were like hustling to get married because they didn't know like when they'd be able to have a wedding again. So everybody was booking. And in that time, my partner then realized that now that he's had time to actually sit and work on the business, this is what he wants to do full time. And there was a bit more cash flow. So he decided to take the risk and actually just jump in to the business 100%. And once we saw that it was actually lucrative for him, it's something that he was being able to live off, I then decided, you know, my current job was not serving me anymore and it was time. It's like the universe was just pushing me into making that decision because I was taking too long to get there. So once that then happened, I decided that it's also time for me to jump. So I'd say COVID sort of like pushed us to just do it. And if we were going to fail, so what? We'd get up again and just, we will recover. That was our attitude just going in.
I love that attitude. And talking about failure and mistakes, what would you say was some of the mistakes that you made in the early stages of the side hustle, and then the lessons that came out of that?
Hmm. I think early mistakes. I can actually talk about a big mistake that we made. So this was like in the moment when we were shifting from side hustle to business. We registered the business, and that was that. Like I said, we continued working, doing our full-time jobs. We registered the business. And then there was a moment when we decided that we actually wanted to go into opening a wedding agency. So we had this amazing idea of like, there was going to be photographers, videographers, makeup artists. Everyone was just going to be operating under the Avenue House. So it would be like this house of different creatives. And if someone wanted to book a wedding, they'd get a full wedding package with us. So that was this groundbreaking idea that we had. But a mistake that we made was that we launched this idea way too quickly. We jumped in so quickly because we were so passionate about it and we really thought it was going to take off. And we didn't have the funds or anything to do it. There was no real planning that went into it. So that was a big mistake for us because once we then launched and we started selling these big packages, we realized the core of our business, which is photography and videography, is actually taking off. That's what's taking off, but the big packages are not selling. And the reason we realized was that we didn't spend enough time planning. And that's why we probably should have taken the 30 minutes to 1 hour a day, the advice I was giving. We probably should have taken that advice. And yeah, that was a big mistake that we made. So maybe eventually we'll get there. But I think for now, we just want to focus on what our business is actually about, the core of our business. And I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make. They're just jumping into things very quickly without doing their research and, you know, understanding what their business is before making bigger decisions.
You've mentioned such important things, and just focusing and doing a little bit of some research, a little bit of some thinking, which I think is absolutely key. So, Anka, I want us to move from one hustler to the next by answering some burning questions. So, as we're going along, people are asking so many questions, and so we're going to try and assist a couple of people by sharing some of your experiences. So, Tobeka wanted to know, how can one best balance studies and having a side hustle? And I know you were a student, you were doing your LLB. So how were you able to balance the two?
Okay, so like I said, when I was studying, I was fully focused on my studies. I didn't let anything get in the way of that. And I only allowed my side hustle to take off my time when I actually had time to give and when I had energy to give the side hustle. I only did as much as I could. You can only push yourself so much and you can't take on too much because you're bound to just fall through the cracks if you do that. So really, you can balance it if you just allow yourself to understand your limitations and how far you can actually go.
Completely agree. Another question that's come through is, how does personal financial literacy benefit you when you actually start a side hustle?
Mm. I actually touched on this a bit earlier on when I said the weird thing is that my side hustle actually taught me financial literacy and understanding how finances were working. So before that, I didn't budget. I didn't understand anything about the budget. But when it came to my business, I realized that I had to be a bit more savvy about these things. So my financial literacy actually came from my side hustle.
And one wonders, if you already had all this knowledge before you started the side hustle, how
Hmm.
different things would have played. Because I think once you've got your money unlocked, so once there's a little bit of some financial education, there's
Hmm.
discipline, there's patience, there's planning, because you've got a budget and you now need to balance certain things, and that ability to balance and to be disciplined and to plan and to be patient, I think plays a role in the side hustle as well.
Hmm.
The other important thing is, if you're saving well, right? You could actually save to start your side hustle. So you need a
Exactly.
thousand rand or 500 rand. If you already are good at saving, you build a habit of saving. It becomes easy. And then in the business itself, if you budget personally, it's then easy to budget for the business. So there's a lot of things that you can take from your personal finances and sort of use it in your actual side hustle as well, which
Yeah.
I think is quite an interesting one. Another question as well, Anka, that has come in, which I think is also a really another interesting one, is, how should I market my side hustle to get more customers, right? So the marketing part of the side hustle.
Okay, so for me personally, Instagram is like the best thing. I tried Facebook, you try all these things, all these different ways of marketing. But Instagram really seems to be the one that takes off. So whenever I promote something on Instagram, you get a lot of traction from your Instagram promotion. So I'd say when it comes to marketing, try and focus more on like your social media, because that's where it's taking off.
Very interesting. So just use social media. I mean, if you're already on all these platforms, just use it a little bit differently, which I think is also quite important. Another one coming through from Nobi, she says, what are the pros and cons of having a side hustle versus turning it into a main hustle? And she says this: I don't want to make hasty decisions and turn the side hustle into a main hustle prematurely. So I think it goes back to, when you need to make that decision of making the jump, what are some of the things that you need to consider?
I think number one, obviously, you need to consider finances. Is your business going to be able to sustain you? So for me, the main thing I was looking at was how much money do I need every month just to survive? And if my business can cover that amount of money that I need just to survive, then that is enough for me. I didn't take into account how much money I need for entertainment, how much money I need to take this trip or whatever. I was focused on how much money do I need to survive. And once I figured out that amount, and I knew that my business would be able to cover me because this is the amount of marketing I was going to put in, this is the amount of clients I wanted to get each month. If you can push for that goal and know that that's how much you need each month, then take the leap. You really should just take the leap. But obviously, plan. Try and plan as best as you can and also have your savings. You can't take the leap, but there's nothing to fall back on because that would be a dangerous thing to do. So I
Yeah,
think planning and have savings ready.
is really, really important. Another question that's coming in is, how do I find the side hustle that works for me? So I think there's so many side hustles that are out there. How do I identify the one that vibes with me, in other words?
Mm. I think focus on what are your hobbies. And like you said, TK, problem solving, looking at things around you. What's a problem that you can solve? Like if it's braiding hair for people, if you are going to be the mobile barber, go for it. Look at what is the gap right now and how can you fill that gap? And that would answer your question.
Such an interesting one. There's one that sort of veers a bit from side hustles, but I want to read it because I think it's important. So when he says passion doesn't pay the bills, what are your thoughts on that statement as side hustles start from a passion?
Mm. Well, I'll say I'm a great example that passion can pay the bills. You really just have to work at it and you have to believe in yourself. I know it's really basic to say like you have to just believe in yourself and it will come naturally. The truth is if you give it enough time, if you spend enough time working on it, something will happen. That's why I said initially, patience is key. I took a long time to get to the point where I'm at now. It took 6 years to get to the point where my business is up and running and I can 100% say I'm a business owner and I can own it. Um, but patience is key and you have to work at it. You can't expect to give 5 hours once a month and expect the thing to take off. You really have to invest your time into your business, your side hustle.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think you definitely have to spend some time being patient, doing some research. I think those types of things are really, really important. One last quick question coming from Hope saying, what can one do to prepare themselves before they start that side hustle? So perhaps there were things that you might have done to just better prepare yourself.
Mm. I
Yeah,
think
because
for
yeah.
me, initially,
Hmm.
sorry, I missed that.
No, 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 continue.
Okay. I said for me, I just jumped into it. I was 100% just ready. I was going to do the side hustle. But like I said, planning is key. So even though I just jumped into my side hustle because I just believed, you know what, once I broke that mental barrier that everybody would be laughing at me and it would be the silly idea, once I broke past that, I was able to spend some time planning towards my side hustle. And I spent a lot of time trying to figure out who my clients were, what my product was, what was the type of package I want to present to my people. And that's why I'm saying you have to invest your time. You don't have to invest a lot of time. You don't have to do 5 hours a day. It's that 30 minutes a day that can really set you apart from the rest.
Oh man, some fantastic advice and words coming there from you, Anka. So, in terms of some of our winners, as we come to the end of the webinar, as I said, lunch is on us as Black Bullion SA, right? So, let's see who some of our winners are. I'm a little bit jealous. I'm even feeling a bit hungry. I've been losing a bit of weight as I've been on the webinar. Hey, 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 hey. So, in terms of the most interactive person that also was just absolutely amazing. This one goes to Tobega Mguni. So she wins herself that Mr. D voucher valued at $100. Big ups to you, Tobega Mguni. For somebody else that has followed us on our social media platforms, Makatini Gugu. Shout out to you. That $100 voucher is coming through your way. And then for the best question or comment, right? This one comes from Ngobi Shezi. So those are some of our winners, Tobega, Makatini, and Ngobi. We will be contacting you guys via email. So we will be sending you through in terms of those vouchers. Big ups to you guys. Super jealous. I'm already hungry. So I wish I was wherever you guys were so that I can share a little bit in that. And of course, remember, keep following us on social media. On Twitter, it's at Blackbullion SA, Blackbullion SA on Instagram, and of course on Facebook. Anke, some quick closing words from you in terms of side hustles.
Hmm. Guys, don't give up. Like I said, failure is just a learning curve. It's just an idea, it's not a real thing. Just have positive thinking, have a what next attitude, and just be willing to learn from everything and give your time towards your side hustle. Be patient, and eventually it will take off.
Ah, man, some beautiful closing words. Thank you guys so much for joining our webinar on side hustles. I hope that over this hour we helped you to unlock your side hustles potential. A special thank you to Anka as well, to the Black Bullion SA team, and of course to all the young people that are part of this growing community that we have. My name is Tsepo Khapane, your host with the most, who is losing weight because he is hungry. So, young people, go out there, start your side hustle, whether it's tutoring or pairing, transcribing, you cook, you bake, you plait hair, you wash cars, you in social media promo, you're a virtual assistant, you teach English online, whatever it is, go and do it. Thank you so much for joining us on the Black Bullion SA, moving you right from the hustle to the flow. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Uncle, we're going to end it off with another high five. So I'm going to give us all a
Okay.
countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. High five.